Hey everyone, there's so many of you. This makes me so happy. Well, thank you guys so much again. I'm Ashley, as Emily said, and today we are going to be talking about identifying valuable customers and implementing their ideas through feedback. And I'm very excited to have this incredibly smart, experienced panel along with us, and I don't want to waste any time, so we are just going to dive right into our first question. So I want to begin by talking about segmenting customers. James, I know you and I chatted a bit about this, so I'm curious around what behaviors your mobile customers take that sets them apart from the rest of your customer base.
Yeah, so it's a good question. At JCPenney, we consider ourselves to be an omni-channel retailer, right? So we have our customers who shop online as well as our customers who shop in the stores. And the stores are a huge part of who we are today. So, one of the things that we've noticed about our customers are, their devices with them anywhere they are in the world, and they actually want to use our app and mobile technology when they're shopping in the stores. So we like to focus on those customers and those things and features that are going to help enable them to improve that store shopping experience, right? So we've created a number of things that just aid you while you're shopping in the store. We released a digital wallet earlier this year, which allows them to store their rewards, their coupons, their gift cards, anything to just make the purchase process easier for them. But then we've also introduced store mode. So one of the things that we found just by, gathering feedback on our customers was nobody can figure out the price of an item in a store. And you think fundamentally, right, like that's so easy. You put a sign up. No, it's really not that easy, though. You put a sign up, signs get moved, signs get outdated, and then we had these price checkers in our stores for a number of years, only to find out that, a previous leader said we don't want to use price checkers anymore, so none of them work. So literally, you go up to a price checker in the store, and there's a sticky note on it that says, "Do not use me." So what we did was we leveraged the app, and we implemented some technology that allowed us to tap into store pricing for all of our stores across the entire chain. So now you can take what the JCPenney app in any store, scan items, get the price for it directly there, and it just really enhances that experience for them.
That's great. Do you guys have anything to add there?
Overall, one of the things that we experience at Concur is a software as a service expense and travel tool that's very global, but we've really started launching our mobile efforts fairly recently for software as a service space. And what we've learned is that those users are really our high frequency users, so they're going to be very, very engaged. And I think that's kind of what's been iterated so far or talked to today so far. So what we've learned, we've had to really approach them in totally different ways than a lot of our other users because they're so engaged that they can be a really good listening post for us.
And Courtney, I know Concur does this on a global scale as well. Can you maybe share some insight into how you approach that side of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Concur right now operates in about 22 languages, 15 of which are on mobile. We have to, because of that, we're also a highly configurable product in addition to that. So we have to look at every single market completely differently. And one of the things that we've started doing is looking at the language component and listening to that. We're starting to figure out how to do sentiment analysis in a machine learning way on different languages. So that's something we've just started doing, as well as how we actually approach. We know that certain markets are going to be more heavily mobile adopting than others. So understanding how we treat the actual mobile product for those countries is going to be absolutely different. One country is not going to be the same as the other.
Makes a lot of sense. So with segmentation, as we all know, comes metrics. How do we measure segmenting? Can be very tricky. So Lisa, I'd love to hear from you around how T-Mobile is approaching segmentation and what are some of the metrics you and your team lean on to really understand what's working and what's not.
Sure. So hopefully you all know who T-Mobile is. We're a telecom provider based here in Seattle, in the fortress over in Bellevue. And T-Mobile has historically been primarily a retail-oriented company, retail and customer care, in spite of the fact that we are the mobile carrier and we own and run your device. So we've been sort of on this transformation to move from a retail and care-heavy interaction with our customers to an actual digital interaction. Seems kind of logical since we are the mobile carrier that we would have a mobile app and mobile interaction, but it's still relatively new for us. So from a segmentation and a metrics perspective, largely the mobile interactions and app interactions are through service applications, right? So the T-Mobile app is an account management app. We have T-Mobile Tuesdays, which hopefully all of you are T-Mobile customers and have Tuesdays, where customers are getting loyalty rewards and basically free products every Tuesday from T-Mobile, and then a variety of others. So primarily service-based applications. So when we look at segmentation and metrics, we're usually looking at cost and revenue in terms of financial metrics. And then we look at sort of customer attributes like what rate plan are you on, how long have you been with T-Mobile, some demographic elements, but we're still sort of on that maturity curve to understand demographics, channel of origin, right? Did you come from a paid channel, an organic channel, age, that sort of thing. So it's still sort of an evolution for us. From a CLV perspective, I think the interesting thing is that we're starting to see that our mobile digital customers are actually higher CLV for us, not just because they're lower cost, but they're actually our more valuable customers. They tend to be our more engaged customers, similar to Penny's, more brand loyal. And we see that also in the surveys and sentiment that we ride the wave of the brand loyalty when it comes to customer sentiment. So we see that at Apptentive quite a bit, and we use it in that way.
The last metric I kind of want to dig into, any of you, I'd love to hear from all of you on this. LTV, we're all looking for the group of customers that have the highest LTV. What that means is so different for everybody. If you're B2B, if you're B2C, just anything that has to do with your business can affect this metric. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on LTV and how you approach it.
It's an important metric for us just because we don't only want you to transact one way with us, right? So if you're a mobile customer today, whether you shop on mobile web or the app, we don't want it to end there for you. Like as a company, it just makes more sense for us if we can tie you to the store customer and becoming that omni-channel customer. So we like to track our customers from like a full life cycle range to know that what you're doing online as well as what you're doing in the store, and how can we tie those two back together? Because ultimately you mean more to us, and our business. If we can get you to go to our stores more frequently, that's going to get other people into the stores. You guys watch the news, store traffic is down, right? So anytime that we can take what we do and how we can market and leverage our customers from a mobile standpoint to push them to the stores, it just makes them more profitable for us as a company.
So I think for us, we look at LTV or CLV, but the most important thing is the customer stays with T-Mobile, right? We get them in the door and then we keep them. Upsell is a component, but not as important as making sure that they continue their service. So I think that's part of the reason that customer experience and customer love is so important to us and always has been, whether it be in the customer service centers or in retail. So we spend a lot of time just making sure customers are happy. We were just talking in the other room, a lot of that has to do during the device launches, making sure they don't go somewhere else, right? So when hypothetically something launches in another month or so here, making sure that moment is perfect for our customers.
It sounds like mobile moments is a thing that you guys really focus on.
It is, and I think we know there are key moments in a customer's life cycle where they will be upset. We know that network obviously is a major component for us, and explaining to customers that, no, seriously, it's getting better. But making sure that once you get them over that one network hurdle, that things like Tuesdays is a big component for customers who really love their free pizza, or just having that experience, right? They're customers who have been with T-Mobile for 20 years because they do call the call center and they get that service that they love. So it's a question of then how do we translate that into a digital environment?
Yeah, and actually at Concur, we've got a little bit of a unique perspective. Our customers are actually really not our users. And so we have a very interesting distinction there where we actually look at really user value, but user value is going to be more in like frequency of usage, not necessarily a lifetime value. We don't look at how much they're spending necessarily. We use that as a segmentation tool, but we don't necessarily use that as anything more than really kind of how we treat them a little bit differently. So what a large part of what we look at is actually going to be frequency of usage. So how often are people traveling? How often are they expensing? And catering the product along those lines. That's kind of the key way that we look at our metrics.
Awesome. All right, enough talking about metrics, you guys. Metrics are great, but they're So let's switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about listening to customers. All of you, this is such a priority for you and your product roadmaps, and I know we all had very deep conversations in prepping for this panel. So I'm very curious around what methods you're all using to really listen to your customers to gather feedback. Lisa, I'll start with you. You're the whole concept of customer obsession at T-Mobile, I know kind of drives everything. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, we've been listening to our customers from the beginning because it's so important to us and making sure that they stay. So in a digital environment, we use your standard tools, your 4Cs, the Apptentive, app stores, things like that. But then we get a lot of our feedback actually from what we call our frontline, so our retail stores and our care folks, and that manifests everything from groups at the call centers who, put intake tickets in straight to the product team. So, hey guys, we want payment arrangements to be more discoverable because we're getting calls about that. To same sort of thing in the retail stores. There's leadership that sort of lines up and gives the product teams direct feedback. We've got UAT guys who go and Reddit. So we've got a T-Mobile subreddit, and they read those reviews and provide them to us. So I think there's an interesting we listen everywhere, but then we actually action on a lot of that stuff in ways that you wouldn't necessarily think. So we've got sort of emergency response kind of team in the social arena that anytime someone tweets at John Ledger, please don't do that today, they'll raise it up, and if there's issues, like things happen, like product changes because someone in the call center said, we need this feature. So that's really cool to see sort of that virtuous cycle of commentary coming back directly from the customers, because we always say on the product side, we can look at the data and we can look at those surveys, and yes, we do prioritize based on that, but those care guys and those retail guys know our customer better than we ever will.
Tweeting at John, ask our MC Red about that later.
Oh dear.
All right,
if
Courtney,
it's
what
good,
about?
It's okay, Red.
Yeah. What about you, Concur?
Yeah, so we actually, I think like every company, there are so many listening posts for what's going on with users and what's going on with customers. And one of the challenges we're actually going through right now is how do we bring all that together? So we have our customers, so we actually have people that are implementing our software with those customers, and we have that listening post. Then we have the actual users through mobile and web. Web, we actually use a homegrown survey satisfaction tool. And then on mobile, we're using Apptentive, and then we have like a whole variety of different areas. So one of the biggest challenges we have is not only getting all that information, but then bringing it together and then trying to figure out how we get it out to the organization. So we're right in the middle of that hurdle. And I think poor Veronica with Apptentive team is dealing with all of my slew of questions about that. But it's been really, really exciting to see some of the changes that have been happening from that and being able to see product actually impacted directly from some of these scenarios. As we were mentioning with Buffalo Wild Wings, a lot of times your users can preempt problems, and we've definitely seen that happen a few times.
Cool. So before we get to James, Courtney, I do want to just dive in a bit deeper. So you're a UX analyst. So any of you who are interested in talking with someone in UX, Courtney will be a great resource for you here today. And you're one of the only, I think the only speaker we have kind of coming with that background. How does your experience with your work particularly sort of influence how you implement these channels and how you think about it from the integration perspective?
So it's actually kind of twofold. So not only do we come from the user experience side, so we are ultimately 100% responsible for the user experience, but like I said earlier, Concur looks at customers and users very differently. Like one definitely there's a relationship there, but they're super different. So we actually find ourselves on the UX team being advocates for the user and having to make sure that we are amplifying that voice as much as we can, because we're kind of like their soldiers in our company that are really trying to make sure that experience is prioritized, even though they're not the ones with the dollars, they're the ones that ultimately impact the dollars. So that's one of the big ways that we're looking at it, is just really making sure that we are getting that information and the importance of that information out to the organization. Yeah.
Great. So James, back to the original question around asking for feedback and listening to customers. How does your team at JCPenney approach it?
I think similar to everyone up here on the panel, right? We probably ask for too much information from our customers. We've noticed that with the older customers demographic, they're very, very detailed in what they're going to tell you. So if you mess up, like, you literally hear about it all day long. So we have, not only do we do email, I mean, there's, we have surveys, but then, bringing Apptentive on board was really, just very, very helpful for us, because we had a problem where we only got negative feedback and we never really asked our customers what we thought about or what they thought about us. It was always when something went wrong, they came to us. But to be able to flip that and kind of get in front of their face with it and say, okay, well, we're open at all times. So every time we have a release now, we have an email address where you can contact us directly, but then we also have the in-app feedback tool. So we tell you directly, hey, send us a message, good, bad, ugly. We want to hear it. We get the ugly stuff. People tell me every day they hate me so much, they hate the app. But a lot of times what you find with that dialogue, though, is they're telling you what's really wrong. So if you listen to your customers enough, you'll get the insight into what it is you need to fix and the things that you need to be building or focused on. So it's important to us to have that our ear to their voice, because they help drive the product roadmap at the end of the day.
Totally, and it can be tough sitting here getting these reviews around, how much people hate you. Ugh, never fun. But like you said, it drives the product roadmap. So walk us through a little bit more about what you do once you have this great feedback. How do you guys implement that? Your mobile team is big. How do you make sure everyone gets use out of it, and how does it drive the rest of your strategy?
It's really just prioritization at the end of the day, right? So you have to, everything that you get from your customers isn't always going to be beneficial, right? But you want to give them the platform to at least say it, and then you take the data that you have, right? So you go into your numbers. We try to be a very data-driven and analytical company. So we're always looking at the data and to figure out how our business is performing, and then what's the correlation between how it's performing or how it may be underperforming and what your customers are saying about it. So we have a forum every morning. Everybody is in the feedback. We have to spend time as a product team in the feedback, and then it's okay, what are the top 3 to 5 items that we've noticed that there are themes there, customers keep talking about it, how do we get that stuff prioritized into our next upcoming sprint to make sure that the dev team is working on those things to improve the product for our customer.
That's great. Courtney, Lisa, if you guys have additions, I'm sure we'd all love to hear how your teams are also approaching it.
Yeah, no, I think the prioritization is key, right? It's there's so much to be done, right? Especially when you're sort of a legacy infrastructure company that's still on this path and you're not digital native, right? So for us, one of our biggest challenges is, we can do the UX, we can go, we do a lot of usability studies, a lot of focus groups, but at the end of the day, we have to connect into our billing system, which has been there for 20 years, right? So there's certain things that are always going to be slightly off that, we as product and marketing don't really want. But outside of prioritization, I think, like for us, an example is we knew that we needed to do biometrics at some point, right? Everybody's got fingerprint login, why wouldn't you do it? But next to the giant list, you're like, is it that important? And really, the business case not only came on, okay, we can improve these seconds in login, but on the fact that if you went into the iOS surveys at the App Store, it was like, Touch ID, Touch ID, Touch ID, Touch ID. Seriously, guys, Touch ID. And that was the business case, was customers are demanding it, we got to do it. So it actually launched this week, which is super exciting, or is rolling out. Because Apple now does rolling releases, which is super cool. That's a new thing for us. But to your point, right, it's prioritization. Sometimes you're fighting against different teams, right? If one VP says, no, seriously, I want shop mode or whatever. We've looked at that too, and you're like, well, God, that's really hard. Maybe 2019, but all of those things kind of need to Shark Tank their way out, and the customer voice is the best voice in that sense.
Well, and it sounds like doing this at scale for a company as large as T-Mobile and all the teams that are bought into this seems tricky. What are some tips that you found are helpful for other people maybe fighting the same problem?
So, I think having prior alignment between those teams helps, right? So, I think when we originally launched the team, it wasn't officially an Agile team, but it was effectively an Agile team, right? You're in a room with the engineers, with marketing, with product, just sort of saying, okay, guys, seriously, February, we got to go. And that's the best way that we found, and we are moving into sort of an Agile transformation model at large, and so that you're not getting these problems where you're throwing something over the fence, and that's been a big issue for us in the past is, marketing decides they're going to launch something, they tell product, engineers hear about it, and then, somewhere down the line, middleware and EIT find out, and the why gets lost along the way. So making sure that you're all sort of sitting in the room, having the conversation with design, with UX, and iterating in a rapid, agile fashion has been sort of our most successful approach to this.
That's great.
Yeah, actually, we're in the middle of doing the exact same process. So our whole organization is made up of a large amount of engineers who all operate on Agile, but we're in the process of getting our UX team aligned with that, which is really exciting. So that means that our priorities will soon be aligned as part of their priorities, which is cool. So doing that is helping us with that scale because we actually have a huge amount of volume too. But in addition to that, it's also looking at how do we automate. And so one of the things we're going to be implementing the Apptentive API soon to get that kind of in our own systems and start to leverage that more automatically, as well as machine learning and whatever sort of algorithms that we can apply to be able to figure out what are those priorities, because sifting through several thousand comments weekly is really challenging, and trying to figure out what is the actual themes, like what are the themes that are coming out of that, and prioritizing those is really challenging. So having some machine do the heavy lifting is very helpful. So that's something else that we're looking into right now.
Cool. Well, from my perspective, you guys are sitting here making it sound pretty easy to do this. And as we all know, it is not. It is hard. And especially the more of your team that buys into this notion that customer feedback should be driving your roadmap. That's the only way you're going to be able to build the best mobile experience possible. The more challenging it gets. So let's go one by one. Let's talk about quick challenges that you have faced. The more specific you can get, the better. And especially if you've been able to overcome those challenges, I'm sure everyone listening would love to hear about it.
It's a daily challenge. I would say one of the biggest challenges we had, right? Coming into the organization, we had just recently launched our iOS app. So there was a bunch of press and hoopla about it. The team, they did it in 90 days. The whole organization was super excited about it. I was a new guy coming in, and I'm like, yeah, this thing is terrible though. So I didn't gain a lot of fans joining the company, but I'm a pretty direct and honest guy, and I felt like if we really wanted to have something that our customers were going to be happy about and that was really going to perform for us, we had to go back and do it over again, right? So we built the business case around here's why we should do it, here's what the data and the metrics say around why we should do it, and here's the lift you'll get once we go back and redo our app and do it the right way. So initially I had the IT kind of technology side saying, no, this is stupid, we already did it once. And then I had product and marketing on my side, like, yeah, he's actually on to something, we should do it. So the biggest thing to kind of help me overcome those gaps were just proving it out via data. We weren't converting at a high enough level to where anybody could say that this app is, going to be best in class and our customers are really going to love it. So, it was all about going back, figuring out how to do it, and then taking what the customers were saying about it and figuring out what was the best experience there too. So we decided to beta test and beta launch this app. We reached out to our customers. We did a survey with Apptentive, and we said, hey, we're launching a new app. we want to know if anybody wants to participate in a beta program. And we had hundreds upon thousands of people sign up for it. And the new app that we launched in July of last year, it was actually with our customers first. So we got their feedback, one-to-one, and they kind of helped us iterate very quickly to put out a new app. So July 5th last year, we rolled out this app to all of our customers, but it wouldn't have been possible, right, if we didn't have that business case, if we didn't have the metrics in the beginning, but then we also needed that customer feedback to kind of help us go at it and make it make sense for us.
Yeah, I think we've had some similar issues. On top of that, something else that we've struggled with is how to become proactive rather than reactive, and especially when you're dealing with such a scale. And we're still struggling with that. I don't think we've solved that, and probably will take a while to do it. But one of the challenges that we have is we really do want to get to the point of two-way conversation. I mentioned listening post, and that's very much a one-way conversation. So trying to figure out how we possibly get to this two-way is one of the biggest challenges that we're struggling with. And some of that's bandwidth, just how do you implement the tools that already exist, like Apptentive's notes tools helps with that kind of two-way conversation, or bandwidth around like how do you respond to these messages that we're getting in. So all of that is something that we're struggling with, and we haven't fully solved yet. We have roadmap hopefully planned for all of that. That'll help with it, but it's kind of a constant struggle a little bit.
Yeah, I think beyond the legacy infrastructure and whatnot, I think one of our biggest challenges has been just faith, right? We believe in the customer, and that's never been a problem, right? So the customer feedback is not our challenge. Our challenge is this transition from a retail and care-oriented environment to a digital environment. And when you have, last year we had the COO come out and say, we have a digital strategy now, we're part of this transformation, we're gonna do it, but you're still moving an entire organization that's used to pointing all marketing messaging to retail, all service messaging to care. And so it's a lot of low-hanging fruit, and my team is largely responsible for a lot of that stuff moving over. But you do have to have that faith and make sure that leadership and everyone from the top down is part of that journey. So that's been a large part of our challenge, is just the education of our peers, right? Like, how do you do a deep link, right? I mean, super basic things that you would think everyone should know, but in a non-digital environment, that's what you're dealing with, is just sort of getting over that leap of faith. I think an example that's been helpful, and maybe I'm skipping ahead, Ashley, but
that's okay.
So last year, we launched this new version of the app. Old version was terrible. We had a 1.2 star app in market. We're like, we got to get rid of this thing, and launched the new version of the T-Mobile app. Still has some room for improvement, but as part of that launch last year, we integrated asynchronous messaging, which is essentially WhatsApp with customer care, or a version. It's not actually WhatsApp, but and that was a giant leap of faith for the organization, because you're talking about removing all of web chat, right, off of all desktop and mobile environments, giving a customer direct digital access to a care agent, right, retraining huge sections of the call centers to be, writing, and they had to have grammar tests and, completely different mode of operation from a standard call center. So it took a huge leap of faith on the part of the care leadership, on the part of the digital leadership, and everyone to sort of say, no, we're really going to go there, because we believe this is the future of how our customers are going to interact with us. And we originally were going to pilot, and it's like, nope, no pilot, we're changing whole call centers over. And it has been an amazing journey, because when it works, it is brilliant and customers love it. There was a period where the care leadership was like, oh God, we can't do this. This is, too many people are showing up. It's too successful, turn it off.
That's such a good problem.
But not, when you're a care center and you're dealing with your metrics and all this kind of stuff, they don't like it so much. And we've been sort of jonesing to market this thing, and they're like, no, there's too many people using it. You can't do that. But every time they question it, and every time it's like, no, it's not reaching parity with voice yet. We're not there yet. We don't believe. we sort of step back and say, no, this is the right thing to do for the customer. They do love it. We do know that there's operational challenges. We do know that there's work to be done. It's brand new. It's never been done at this scale before. But they do like it, and we know it's the future, so believe in it.
Sure. Yes.
Can I ask a question? Is that all right?
Sure. Go ahead.
So I've heard a couple of things said. I've heard, the customer voice is always right, and I know T-Mobile, you mentioned, they said that you're listening to everything, right? Reddit, social, customer service. It's a good approach, but, Henry Ford said if we asked the customer, what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse. So how do you distill down a product roadmap when you have, in your case, 73 million, voices?
So just to repeat for those of you who might not have heard, we're going to talk about distilling down a product roadmap when you're hearing from many different customers suggesting many different things.
Yeah, so I think going back to our point of prioritization earlier, right, we don't, there are some comments where we sort of thanks, but no, right? There's a lot of crazy things that we hear also, right? I think there was some comment about I don't know, the chocolate mafia or something in some App Store review. I'll find it and give it to you guys. But we hear a lot of crazy things too. But there's that prioritization that happens, right? Where you as a product owner may innately know what that roadmap is going to look like, right? You've got that first version of it to say, I think we should do payments and in-store pickup and Apple Pay and whatever, right? And you've got your list, and you say, okay, this is what I want to do, and this is the business case and whatnot. I think customer feedback we use kind of for two things, right? One is new ideas. So sometimes we hear things from customers that the product owners wouldn't have thought about previously, or they're just problems that we didn't know existed, right? So I think discoverability of payment arrangements is one of them, right? And we got that from a call center rep, right? Where they're like, we can't find this one button, and we're trying to explain it to somebody. Can you move it? Okay, cool, we can do that. That's pretty easy, and we wouldn't have thought of it necessarily. We might have found it eventually in UX. I think the other one is just validating, right? Your product roadmap and your ideas that you have. So if you've got that prioritization and that's what you have your business case based off of, it's saying, I have this gut reaction. Are we hearing the same things from our customers in terms of what they want? So it's not necessarily we're only looking at the surveys and saying, okay, these are what we're going to build. We're using it either for ideas that we wouldn't have had otherwise and signals that we wouldn't have had otherwise, and then sort of fixing the ranking. I don't know if you have anything else, James.
Yeah, I would just say, as a product owner, it's your job to be the visionary as well as the strategist, right? And regardless of what the customers are saying, you still have to have that perspective. And the only way you have that right is by paying attention to your industry, becoming a subject matter expert about all things mobile or whatever industry you're in, whether it's telecom or retail from my standpoint. Knowing what your competitors are doing, having a perspective on where you think the industry is going, and then building things with asking yourself before you build anything, what am I trying to solve for, right? If you're just building stuff blindly, you're not trying to solve for anything, then you're not helping yourself or helping your customer. But then you sprinkle in, the feedback and those little gems and those nuggets they give you for things that you may not be thinking about. So from my world, right? Customers, for whatever reason, still go into the store to pay their credit card bill every month. Blows my mind when the credit team tells me this. I'm like, you got in your car, put gas in it, and you drove to the store to pay your credit card bill. And they're like, yeah, people just love to do it. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just put the credit card tool in the app, no brainer, right? And I don't make any money off of that. If you come in the app and you pay your bill, it doesn't help me at the end. I'm not judged on that at the end of the day, but it's little stuff like that you're not really thinking about. Hey, well, if it's gonna be convenient for them and it means that I'll get more traffic, and then my thing is if I get you into the app, it's up to me to engage you other ways, then I'm gonna take that type of stuff, right? But I just think you have to balance you being the product owner and you being the visionary of where your product is going, and then also taking into account customers will tell you what you're doing well, and they may tell you something you're not thinking about. It's always good to get a perspective from someone who's not always in the weeds and looking at it every day.
For sure. Well, going back on this challenge question originally, as you were all sitting here, who of you, can you raise your hand if you have also been struggling or are currently struggling with something that these panelists have talked about? All right, that's a lot of people. So I think the big takeaway here is, like, you know, a conference of this size, this is great. You actually get to meet others struggling with the same thing that you're trying to solve. I definitely encourage you all to meet other people and have these conversations. You know, if these 3 huge companies are struggling with this, I'm sure it's very common that a lot of us are too. So so take the opportunity today to really dig in and talk to these folks afterwards. They will be happy to expand more, I am sure. So let's bring it back for a quick story time before we wrap here. So we talked a lot about customer insights already. I'd love to hear stories from you guys around how a piece of feedback or a decision or something that you've heard from your customers really drove your product strategy, whether it was a positive thing or a negative thing or something in between. Any of you want to start?
We've got a good one. No. So generally speaking, at Concur, our app is what has previously been considered what we call a companion app. So it is not full-featured. It doesn't have everything that our web service offers, which is definitely a good thing in some cases. As I mentioned, we have a lot of configuration capabilities, so to offer that in mobile would be pretty crazy. So it's a little bit more limited, but the way that we've looked at it from the strategy perspective is it's only going to handle like these couple of things, or is the question of, do we give them everything? And so that was one of the biggest challenges we had to deal with, is understanding, okay, how do we even shape the strategy of what our mobile app should be? And so what we were able to do is look at a lot of different user data, including the actual user comments, but looking at clickstream data and a bunch of other sources to understand how are users actually using this product. And my team went on what was like basically a local roadshow about mobile and the user story behind that to help try and inform that. And what we found is that there's actually 2 very different users of our mobile product. There's this user that's like basically a road warrior who is always traveling and needs to have it as a companion in order to capture receipts, in order to figure out their itinerary, to book their next leg. But there's also that infrequent user that's only gone in once and has no idea what the app's even for. And so how do you guide both those strategies in one app? And that was something that was totally unknown to our strategy team. And with the data that we had, we were able to say, you know, we do need to build for these 2 different user stories, because it's a huge amount of our volume that we're seeing.
And Courtney, I know you shared with me that that Concur's UX team, your sort of motto, if you will, is proactive versus reactive. Do you feel like that has helped these types of situations when they arise? Has it helped you be able to sort of deal with them and strategize in a quicker, more effective way?
Yeah, it's definitely a work in progress. But yes, it is. It's something that one of the things that we're really trying to do is really kind of totally encapsulate what the users are really looking for and be able to be that expert when we're called upon by product or by executive leadership or what have you. So in order to be proactive, you really have to be fully ingrained in what is the user story, what is the user feeling, and what does that experience look like. So we've had to do a lot of that, and it's in a lot of ways, it's actually by being so ingrained, it's prevented a lot of challenges around customer dissatisfaction, where we actually have clients that are coming to us and saying, look, my users really don't like your product. And we've been able to say, hey, actually, these users aren't liking the product for this client. Maybe we need to go talk to that client and figure out what we can change. So it's prevented a lot of challenges that would have otherwise escalated a lot higher, for sure.
So I think I already gave away my story about async messaging. So, but I think
I'm sure you have more, right?
Yeah. So since I sit on sort of what we call digital adoption, right? So my challenge is, how do we design a strategy for user acquisition? Originally, we were focused largely on the T-Mobile app, which is an account management app. Extremely boring, right? So I'm trying to get you to do things that you innately don't want to do, like pay your bill. And how do I make that compelling and just make it part of what retail tells you to do and just part of your everyday life? So that's sort of been the journey that we're on, or have been on for sort of the last year. Right now, we're at an interesting pivot point where it's not just about that app, it's about all of the apps that we have thrown into market at some point over the last 10 years that are still lighting up on customers' phones. And we're asking this question of what an app ecosystem looks like. What should the strategy look like in a world where you can't have everything in one app? I want you to operate digitally. What does your digital life look like for T-Mobile when I need you to engage with all of these different services that I'm trying to sell you? They live in different applications. A retail associate doesn't understand all of them, and I'm trying to get you to do that. So we're just still working through this, but it's been an interesting challenge, and we've actually talked to some of our partners in Seattle about how they handle sort of this issue of an app ecosystem. When I think about it as sort of like, if I've got 10 minutes a month with any given customer, which app do I want them in? What do I want them doing? And how do I get them back, right? So user acquisition is a big issue for us from a digital perspective. Again, customers don't think of us as a technology company. You're not like, okay, I want to go in the Name ID app today, right? Like, I want to go into Caller Tunes today because, you got to get your ringtones. So it's just a question of, like, how do we rationalize the applications that we have thrown into market and published, consolidate them in some way? What does the stack look like in that instance? And then how do we re-engage them in an appropriate way going forward? So that's sort of the journey that we're on right now. And it's sort of a work in progress, so if anybody has ideas about how to handle sort of a rational app ecosystem, happy to hear those. But that's sort of we only get so much mind share of our customer because in their life cycle and tenure with us, it's like they're either paying their bill, buying a new device, or they've got a problem, right? Usage to me is actually a bad thing in some instances, which is very counterintuitive. Because if they're using the app, it means there's a problem. And so how do I deal with those situations when engagement is not necessarily positive? So.
All right, yeah, go ahead.
I would just say, one of the things that we ended up building at JCPenney was a digital wallet, and that was, strictly driven by customer feedback. So if you talk to our customers who shop at Kohl's, who we call, one of our direct competitors, right? The biggest thing that they would always say was, well, we shop at Kohl's over JCPenney because Kohl's has a digital wallet. They make it so easy for me to, add these different things that they mail to me, add them to my wallet. So, we heard that for a long period of time. We didn't actually do anything about it or make any decisions on it until we finally sat back and said, okay, well, if we did this, would it actually help us gain back some of those customers who tend to go to our competitor more than they go to us? So that was really the main driver for building out that feature. It was to close a competitive gap, but it was because our customers told us that this is why they went to someone else other than us, and it was important for us to do what we could to pull them back to JCPenney.
That's great. Well, we are running out of time, and I want to make sure you all come for actionable tips, right? You're not going to give us your day unless you can take something back and use it right away. So I'd love to go through just rapid-fire fashion. Can each of you share 3 tips that our listeners can go back and use into their strategies for how you can leverage consumer insights to make your mobile experience better?
Okay.
You're first.
Well, I know I'm going to, I think there's some overlap in what our tips are too, so I might steal a few. But one of the first ones, I have to say, because I'm from user experience, so this is totally going to give me away there, but make sure you're involving your users in your product, involving in your product roadmap. So not only bringing them in, so if you have a user experience team, don't be afraid to bring them in and actually do some user testing if you don't do that already. But if you do that, as a product manager, product owner, go sit in on those experiences and see what is actually coming from that voice. It's a great way to listen. So that's one, is kind of involving them. The other one is integrating that data across all the teams, so making sure you're amplifying that voice. So either through like dashboarding or even just monthly reporting or presentations. We at our company we do at Concur we do a lot of lunch and learns. So a great way to share user story that way. And then lastly is automate. So even if you don't have a lot of volume right now, you will most likely, hopefully. And so that's kind of the idea is the more you automate, the more that you can get more rich insights out of it and help you prioritize, help you share that story out.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest ones is just ask for help, right? I sit in an organization where we run a cross-functional agenda, right? If we sat in our little silo and tried to either build product or market product on our own, I would be horribly unsuccessful. I think asking for help and getting those subject matter experts, T-Mobile is a relationship-based culture with a lot of institutional knowledge and silos. So, actually just going and hunting down that retail store rep who understands what folks in Indiana are going to want, I would never know those things, right? So leveraging those people, but then also giving the help back is important. We do a quarterly brown bag with our engineers, showing them the campaigns that ran as a result of what they built. And that is innately valuable to us, partly because they're just happy to know that what their product actually did and that we're talking about it. But then, the next time I go over and I'm like, can you fix the ad ID issue? They will do that for me. So I think just having that sort of virtual cycle between the teams is really important, and having that positive relationship, regardless of where in the company you sit, is super helpful. I think that's the one I have for right now.
Yeah, and I know we're short on time, so I would bring it down to one, and it's something I learned in working in sales years ago. It was always be closing, right? I hated that term, but it made sense. Always be closing, but in this world, it's always be listening, right? Your customers are going to talk to you. They have, valuable information that they want to give to you, so you should always be listening to it. You don't always have to decision on it, but, at least take the feedback, figure out how it makes sense for your business, and then go from there.
That was awesome. Thank you all so much. Round of applause for our panelists. Great. And really, talk to these people. They've seen it all. They're insanely smart. Corner them. Get their thoughts before you leave.